Hi my muddy people, I'm Nat at Mud Magic. Thank you for joining me again. Welcome back. Today I am going to attempt to throw a large vase. I thought that I'd bring you along for the ride because I'm definitely not a traditional trained potter, so this is just my way of doing it. So I just recommend look at as much YouTube as you can, take little bits from everywhere, do what works for you. Don't be told that you have to do things a certain way. I have had that happen to me in the past, and when I've tried it, it does not work for me. So I thought I'd show you my unconventional way of doing it. So this is the biggest I've tried. This is 3 kilos of clay. Trace always says she likes watching me pulling up walls and throwing pots, so I dedicate this to her because this is my first YouTube video where she's not here, so I'm all by myself. So this one's for you, Trace. I hope that it works. We shall see. I'm very new at doing large pieces, but I really enjoy them. So what I find with these, the best way to do it is to try and keep your cylinder really thin, because it's much easier to belly out than it is to try and collar pieces back in if you've gone too wide on your cylinder. So I'll give it a go and we'll see how we go. So obviously this is a lot taller than most people would start with, but I find that easier because you're not trying to then collar in the base and everything. So I'll probably end up pushing it out to a certain degree, but we'll see how we go. So first thing with throwing large, try not to get too much water on it because your walls won't thank you for it. And use a drier clay, if that's the right word, like a thicker clay. If you try and do this with a really soft clay, you're not going to do yourself any favors. It's really hard because the walls will just collapse on you. You won't be able to do it, especially if you're beginning like me. If you're an expert, go for it. You will be watching this anyway. But you know, to start with, at least just use a nice firm clay, because your walls will be a lot more stable as you pull up, and you'll find it a lot easier than if you start with a softer clay. Again, it'll be more forgiving of you adding water to it as well. You can squeeze your water on the inside like you normally would. That's not so much of an issue, but just try and keep the outside drier. What I try to do as a ballpark is keep the middle about whatever I can fit my arm into, the middle of it. So quite a small, well, my arms are not small, but a smallish cylinder, because you'll see it just will make it so much easier than if you're trying to then later on collar back in. It's just a nightmare. I've tried to do it and it's not good. So first of all, I just start with trying to kind of like even out my walls. So at this point, when you've got such thick walls and so much clay, you're pushing you're pushing really, really, really hard inside and out, because you've got to get the clay up. You don't want to be doing too many pulls, because the more you play with your clay, the more you're going to stress your clay, and the more in the end that it's potentially going to collapse. So I've probably left too much clay in the bottom there, so I'll just pull that out a little bit more. So I always, all of my pots, no matter what I'm making, I always tend to have them too bottom heavy, and then I end up, you know, I don't like them as much because they're too heavy. But with vases, it's not so much of an issue, because if you imagine them full of flowers, number one, you're not carrying them around offering them to people. They're sitting on a table or wherever, but you want the stability, because you don't want the water and the flowers to go flying if they get knocked. So I don't really mind if they're a bit heavier in the bottom. Always try and keep my hands connected like that when I'm throwing. Obviously it's impossible when this gets taller. I won't be able to do that. And I always try to pull in towards the center, so that you're kind of forcing your pot to go inwards and stay as a thinner cylinder as you can, because if it bows out, as I said before, it's a lot harder to collar it back in. Always try and keep your water out of the bottom, and then you end up squishing it back in anyway on your walls, but it'll stop. If the water sits in the bottom there, it's just going to end up causing problems and you get S cracks and things. With the wall, when you're going big, try just to wet it with a sponge, because you don't want too much water on it, especially on the outside. So we'll just keep going. My thumb kind of waits there for my hand to meet it. Again, I'm trying to pull towards the middle, and again I'm using a lot of pressure between my two hands. So a lot of squeezing going on to get that clay up. So you can see already my rim is very, very, very wobbly. So I probably didn't have it very well centered, but that's okay. I don't fiddle with that yet. I'll wait until the end, because if I try and fix that now, next pull it's going to do exactly the same thing anyway. So there's no point. All you're going to do is waste clay. You might as well wait till the end. And as I say, this is not supposed to be an expert tutorial at all. In fact, I don't even know if it'll make YouTube, but it's just to show how I do it and maybe give you a tip that you might think, oh, I never thought of trying doing that, or whatever, or giving you the courage to try. You know, as everybody keeps saying to me, it's just clay. If it collapses, you can always just dry it back out and re-throw it again the next day, put it in a plastic bag, whatever, get it back to the consistency and throw it again. Don't waste it. I've done that many times. And so if you push the boundaries, you're going to have failures, but you're going to end up surprising yourself. I've certainly surprised myself a few times with pottery, good and bad surprises. So I'm just trying to get some of that clay from the bottom, because as I said, my pots are always bottom heavy. So again, I'm trying to keep it coming in. I'm not even thinking about the shape yet, because I often find with my pots, they decide what shape they want to be and I just go with it. Because if you try and make a pot something that it doesn't want to be, you know, people talk about clay memory, you'll find that it'll end up not working, or it just won't be pleasurable. You'll just be fighting with the clay the whole time. Now you can see there I've got some throw lines, so you can get your rib and push from the inside and the outside at the same time, because you're sort of smoothing inside as well, but you're also recompressing your walls, putting a bit of strength back in the walls at the same time. So I usually do that at about this point anyway, regardless, and it'll just help you get a bit of more strength into your walls. If you do get a weak spot in your walls, I don't recommend trying to play with it too much when you get to the shape, because it'll just end up collapsing. Either, you know, if you're making it into a bowl or a vase, or belling it, or trying to make it into a big round, what do they call them, the moon jars. I wouldn't do that. Even if that's your initial thought, you've always got to be changing things up with pottery. You know, this still could end up a plate or a bowl. You never know until I finish. In my head, I want it to be a vase, but I'm just going to get that water out of the bottom. But if you let the clay be what it wants to be, you'll be more successful, especially when you're beginning out anyway. Oh, there's a bit of a wobble there. So it's a lot harder when you can't connect your hands together anymore because it's so tall. It's got a bit of a wobble happening in the bottom there. Just always use your hands. You know, your hands are your best tool. Have a feel what the walls feel like, feel what you're doing to them. So you can see as well, this is 3 kilos of clay. I think that's about 6 pounds, I don't know, but I always have to go onto my phone and convert your pounds into my kilos. So you guys from America can go back and convert backwards. But I think it's about £6. You can, obviously, the thinner the cylinder, the taller, the more height that you get from it. So that's another benefit, another bonus to keeping your walls a lot, your cylinder a lot thinner if you want the height. So my rim's going real wonky now, but that's all right. As I keep saying, I'm no expert, so I will cut that off at the end. Which is, sometimes it can be a bit depressing cutting off that rim, because you got all the height you wanted, and the last thing you want to do is cut off anything off the rim and lose any of your height. So this is my first time of even videoing myself throwing, so I'll be interested to watch it back myself. But I know that getting those throw lines, because I'm probably throwing a bit fast because I'm nervous. I'm trying to do it quicker, which I shouldn't do. You should never, ever, 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 ever rush any stage of pottery. As I was told by my teacher when I first started, pottery is an absolute lesson in patience. And I am not a patient person, so it's been really good for me to learn that you have to be patient. You know, you got to wait for them to dry. You got to wait. You got to try and pull slowly. You've got to try and wait for them to get to the leather hard before you can trim them. And then you've got to, you know, or if you want to carve them, which I'm hoping to do with this one, depending on how it goes. Oh, I didn't wet it. And you've got to obviously wait till it's bone dry before you can bisque it. And you got to bisque it, then you got to wait to have the time to glaze it, and you know, glaze it, then you got to wait while you glaze fire it, and then you finally get to see it. And hopefully you finally get to see it in the end. All right. So I went too fast again. Anyway, that's all right. At least I'm getting some nice height out of this one. My tallest as well, of course, because it's the most clay that I've thrown. But again, this is the most times I've pulled a wall as well, because it's more clay, I guess, but I'm probably stressing the clay, so it'll probably start getting little kinks and wobbles in it if I keep going. So I'll do one more pull, because as I say, I hate how heavy my pots always are, and I am trying to work on that. So let's see. So the more pulls you do, the softer you get with your pressure, so that you don't get those kinks and bobbles in your walls. Okay, so that's about as far as I'm going to push it, because as I said before as well, I'm hoping to carve this. So I want a little bit of thickness in the walls, but also I want to do a little bit of shaping of it now. So you need some thickness depending on how you're going to shape your piece. You need to have some thickness in your walls, especially if you want to belly it, then it's going to stretch the clay. But also, if you want to if you follow Hissin Lee, he makes those big moon jars. Sorry if I got his name wrong. He makes those beautiful big moon jars, which I attempted the other day, and I did a little one, and they're just beautiful. But you know, he stretches them. You'll start with cylinder like this, and he'll stretch it out to here. So obviously, to do that, you need a lot of clay, or you're going to go through the wall. So always think about that as well when you're throwing, what you want your end result to be. So now, before I play with the shape of it, I'm going to cut that rim off. Now it's a bit dry now. try and make the rim a bit straighter. That's a bit better anyway. So then when I play with the rim, it's probably going to do the same thing anyway, but that's a start for when I'm shaping it. So then you obviously got to think about how you want to shape it. So it's sort of naturally got a bit of a belly starting here anyway, so I might just go with that. As I say, if that's what your pot wants to do. Now when you're doing this, you could potentially pull your pot off center, which is really frustrating as well, have it wet. But also you don't want to push too hard too fast, or you will end up having it off center, like it won't be a round belly, it'll look funny. So I kind of want to belly it and then have it come back in, I think. Kind of like that, but a bit more. So again, don't rush this process. The slower you go, the happier you'll be with the shape, because again, you can belly it more and more and more, but bringing it back in, you won't want to be doing it. Believe me, I've had to try before, and it's not as easy as you would assume. So these walls are actually still very thick, but as I say, I'm going to carve them, so I'm hoping that would take some weight out of them when I carve them, if I deep carve them. Kind of want that in a bit here. And you always want, when you're thinking about, especially again as a beginner, when you're thinking about up here your shoulder, you want to have that very a very gradual shoulder, because if you push that, if you have that sort of horizontal, this is going to collapse in with the weight of the clay. So you've got to think about that when you get up to the shoulder as well, that you just want to be very, very gentle with that. I've collapsed many a vase, small vases, I haven't done many big ones, at the shoulder, so I'm always a bit cautious of that. I say now, we'll see when I get to there. So it's sort of, it's not really as in as I would like down the bottom, but when you're trimming it, I've got a fair bit of clay down the bottom there, so I can trim that in at more of an angle anyway. So you can always hide a few imperfections when you're trimming. You can hide the rim as well if you're not happy with the rim, or you know, again, professional potters will probably cringe at me saying that, but you know, that's, you got to do what you got to do when you're learning. So I think that's starting to get to where I want it. I'm not even going to tell Trace that I'm going to put this up on YouTube, because she subscribes to me anyway. She don't have a choice. So I know that she'll get a notification when it goes up. So she'll get a surprise, an extra little video that she won't be expecting, because she's always here with me. So she'll be wondering what's going on. But yes, so while I'm talking about that, thank you to my subscribers. You would have seen one of my early on kiln unloadings when I got so excited that I got to 10 to double digits of subscribers. Well, I now have 200 and something subscribers at my last check. So I just, it just means so much to me. I'm so grateful. So I'm just going to pull up a bit of this rim, try and get it a bit thinner. So you can, you know, you obviously saw me using a sponge, especially throwing large. I like to use a sponge because I don't have the strength in my hands and my knuckles to be pulling up with my knuckles like this with that massive amount of clay. But as I said in the start, feel free, do whatever works for you. I've seen a lot of professional potters pull with a sponge after my teacher was horrified and told me never to pull with a sponge. So I went back to it, and I didn't, when I stopped, I really struggled trying to do the whole knuckle thing. So I went back to it, and the sponge, and it's just what works for me. I just much prefer it. So as you can see, when I've played around with that rim, it's gone wonky again, which I knew it would, which is frustrating because now you have to cut it off again. So you can kind of keep going and going and going. It's like a vicious circle of pulling and cutting and pulling and cutting, that in the end you have to just accept it for what it is, or you just be going forever. And certainly my pots are never perfect anyway, so if I can get some semblance of a vase that I can then carve, that's what I want to do with this one. So stay tuned when I with my kiln unloadings. You'll eventually, when this one dries till tomorrow, I'll carve it tomorrow, trim it and carve it tomorrow, and then you will see it. And then I'll biscuit when it's bone dry in a week or so, because once I've carved it, I'll have to put it under plastic to slow dry it, and then I'll biscuit, and then I will glaze it. Goodness knows what colour I'm going to glaze it. Suggestions are always welcome. Have to be celadons, because I want to see the carving through the celadons. So, you know, comment, suggest what colour you would like to see it. Maybe you'll win. Maybe you'll, you know, if anyone can take the choice away from me when it comes to carving, happy for you to do so. So that's it. I might fiddle with it a bit more, but I'll let you go. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got something out of it. You'll see it, as I say, if I don't collapse it by keeping on playing with it now, because I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to play a bit more with that, maybe get that rim up a bit higher or something, but you will see when I'm finished, and if it does fail, I'll let you know. So thank you again for watching. Stay muddy and have a magic day. Bye.